Canada should be our 51st state. There's no tariffs, no nothing. And I say that, we give them military protection. They have a very small military. They spend very little money on military. On NATO, they're just about last in terms of payment. Because they say, why should we spend on military? That's a tremendous cost. Most nations can't afford to even think about it. Why should we spend on military? The United States protects us. And I would say that's largely true. We protect Canada, but it's not fair. It's not fair that they're not paying their way. And if they had to pay their way, they couldn't exist. When I spoke to, let's call it the Prime Minister rather than the governor, but when I spoke to him, I said, why are we giving you $200 billion a year? He was unable to answer the question. I said, why are we letting you make millions of cars and send them in? He was unable to answer the question. Justin Trudeau, a nice guy. I think he's a very good guy. I call him Governor Trudeau. He should be governor, because the fact is that if we don't give them cars, we don't have to give them cars. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell cars into the United States. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell lumber or anything else into the United States. And all I'm asking to do is break even or lose a little bit, but not lose $200 billion. And we love Canada. I love Canada. I love the people of Canada. And but honestly, it's not fair for us to be supporting Canada. And if we don't support them, they don't subsist as a nation. Okay?
Mr. President, on the tariffs, Mr. President, have you made a decision on what level you will seek on tariffs in the European Union?
We have made a decision. We'll be announcing it very soon, and it'll be 25%, generally speaking, and that'll be on cars and all of the things. And European Union is a different case than Canada, different kind of case. They've really taken advantage of us in a different way. They don't accept our cars. They don't accept essentially our farm products. They use all sorts of reasons why not. And we accept everything of them, and we have about a $300 billion deficit with the European Union. Now, I love the countries of Europe. I guess I'm from there at some point a long time ago, right? But indirectly, pretty directly too, I guess. But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
What will happen in these countries where the EU retaliate?
They can't. I mean, they can try, but they can't.
China did. They
They're
imposed
pledging
tariffs
troops, sir.
went into effect. China's
That's
retaliatory
right.
tariffs
That's
on
right. But
the 10th of February. Has there been
That's
any
right.
impact that you've been able to observe?
That's right. Now, they can do it, and they can try, but the numbers can never equal what ours, because we can go off. We are the pot of gold. We're the one that everybody wants. And they can retaliate, but it cannot be a successful retaliation, because we just go cold turkey. We don't buy anymore. And if that happens, we win.
Are you talking to Eric Prince about privatizing deportations?
No, I haven't.
Mr. President, you're in litigation with CBS News. Is this a case that you'd like to see go to trial, or are you open
With
to
who?
CBS, the 60 Minutes?
CBS?
Yes.
Well, CBS did something that was amazing. Kamala was unable to answer a question properly, and they took the question that they asked and they inserted an answer. They gave her an answer. This was 2 days before the election, right before the Sunday night before the election. And they wrote out they put her words from another question that was asked about a half an hour later, and they put that into the question. Nobody's ever even heard of it before. Nobody's ever heard of anything like this before, but they then did it, they say, on numerous occasions. And the FCC is looking at it very strongly, and everybody's looking at it, but nobody's ever seen anything. Think of it, they took her answers and they changed them. And I don't mean they changed a word or two, or they cut off a half a sentence, or they cut off a couple of words. I mean, I've had that happen too, but that you just say, then they say, well, we want brevity. We wanted to do it for time. They took out her answer and they inserted an entirely different answer that made her sound competent. And they did this, and nobody's ever, I thought I've heard of everything when it comes to that stuff. No, I've never heard of it. Nobody's ever seen. So we sued, and we are in discussions of settlement.
What would a number be, like, what's a number that you would think would be appropriate?
I think it's a lot. No, I mean, it could have, it probably did affect the election. I mean, we won by a lot. As I said, too big to rig, but it probably did affect the election. You know, probably could have won by more, but I could have lost the election because of that. We have to get to honest elections. We have to go back to paper ballots. We have to go back to voter ID. One-day election ideally, or short term, not these 48-day and 61-day elections where boxes are put in a room and, oh, let's move the boxes because we're putting in a new air conditioning system. Then you see the boxes move and then you say, well, where are all the boxes? You know, what happened to the boxes that never came back? No, our elections are extremely dishonest. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in voting and all of these different things that we put in. No other country in the world has it. You know, France went to, they had some of the things that we had, and they went to same-day voting, all paper. And, you know, paper is very sophisticated now. It's a very sophisticated form of voting right now. It's a very safe form of voting. You know, the other things for the governors, I wish the governors would do it because the paper ballots will cost 9% of the machines, and they're 100%. You know, nothing's foolproof, but they're as close as you get. So we'll see what happens. But on the 60-minute thing, nobody's ever seen anything like it.
Would you link the FCC action to the litigation?
And I don't think it's linked, but probably the lawyers look at it, you know, because I know it's going along. FCC is headed by a very competent person, and you have some very competent people on the board, and so I think they're looking at it very seriously.
So
Yeah.
of all the deals that you've done in your life, all the people you've sat across from and negotiated with, is President Putin distinct in any way?
He's a very smart guy. He's a very cunning person, but I've dealt with some really bad people. But I will tell you, as far as this is concerned, you have to understand, he had no intention, in my opinion, of settling this war. I think he wanted the whole thing. When I got elected, we spoke, and I think we're going to have a deal. I can't guarantee that. You know, a deal is a deal. Lots of crazy things happen in deals, right? But I think we're going to have a deal. If I didn't get elected, I believe he would have just continued to go through Ukraine and over a period of time. A lot of people would have been killed, would have lasted for a period of time. And the reason that Ukraine, and I have great respect for the Ukraine as fighters, they're great fighters, but without our equipment, that war would have been over, like people said, in a very short period of time.
Is there a time?
And if you remember, I gave the javelins, and the javelins are the things that knocked out those tanks right at the beginning of the war. They said that Obama at the time gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. Well, I was the one that did that, but I want to see it come to an end.
Will he have to make concessions, President Putin?
Yeah, he will. He's going to have to. And I believe that because we got elected, that war will come to an end. And I also believe if we didn't get elected, if this administration didn't win the election by a lot, that war would go on for a long time, and he would want to take the whole thing. Because the big question I had is, does he want to take the whole thing? But the reason, and the Ukrainians are good fighters, I have to say, but without the equipment. Without our equipment, we have the best equipment in the world. We have the best military equipment in the world. Without our equipment, that would have been over very quickly.
What concessions would you like to see? What concessions would you like to see?
Oh, I don't want to tell it right now, but I can tell you that NATO you can forget about. I think that's probably the reason the whole thing started. And I think, JD, we can say that. Do you have a statement on that? You've been very much involved. I gave him the beauty.
Great. Maybe the hardest question, sir. I mean, look, as the president said, we're not going to do the negotiation in public with the American media. He's going to do it in private with the president of Russia, with the president of Ukraine, and with other leaders. And I think that's how this has to go. I think that I just want to push back against some of the criticism I've seen of the administration on this, because every single time the president engages in diplomacy, you guys preemptively accuse him of conceding to Russia. He hasn't conceded anything to anyone. He's doing the job of a diplomat, and he is, of course, the diplomat in chief as the President of the United States.
On the gold card, sir, can you talk a little bit more about the vetting process?
He'll go through a process. The process is being worked out right now, and we're going to be very careful.
Will there be restrictions on, for instance, can Chinese nationals get
No, we're
one?
not going to
Iranian
restrict,
nationals
we're
get
probably not going to be restricting too much in terms of countries, but maybe in terms of individuals. We want to make sure we have people that love our country and are capable of loving the country.
There's a measles outbreak in Texas at the moment in which a child is reported to have died. Do you have concerns about that? And have you asked Secretary Kennedy to look into that?
Well, why don't we, Bobby, do you want to speak on that?
We are following the measles epidemic every day. I think there's 124 people who have contracted measles at this point, mainly in Gaines County, Texas. Mainly, we're told, in the Mennonite community. There are 2 people who have died, but we're watching it, and there are about 20 people hospitalized, mainly for quarantine. We're watching it. We put out a post on it yesterday, and we're going to continue to follow it. Incidentally, there have been 4 measles outbreaks this year in this country. Last year, there were 16. So it's not unusual. We have measles outbreaks every year.
You sound a little under the weather yourself.
I have a permanently bad throat.
Mr. President, would you send U.S. peacekeepers to support the European peacekeepers? Would you do any sort of U.S.?
No, we're going to support Europe, yeah.
And how would you do
We're
that?
very
How
friendly
would
with
you-
Europe. We have a great relationship with Europe. I mean, you could ask, you could talk about France, you could talk about any of them. I mean, we have a great relationship with Europe.
But how will the United States do that? Would there be?
Well, how? I mean, you're asking me a question, what are we doing in the field? Let's worry, I hope we have that problem where we could worry about peacekeeping. We got to get there first, but I hope we have the problem of worrying about peacekeeping. That'll be the easiest problem, I think, JD, that we've ever had.
That would be part of the deal, presumably. That would be great.
We'll do it at the time, but peacekeeping is very easy. It's making the deal that's very tough. And again, nobody was speaking to Russia at all. And, probably 1.5 million soldiers have been killed, close to 1.5 million soldiers, not to mention I will tell you, the thing with that horrible war that should have never started, would have never started if I were president. And it didn't start for 4 years, and it was not even thought about starting. But the thing with that war is that you're highly underestimating the number of people that have been killed. Far more people have been killed in that war than you talk about. You like to talk about numbers like 1 million people. Well, they had much more than 1 million soldiers killed. But you have a lot of cities that have been knocked to the ground. They're demolition sites, literally demolition sites. Every single building is knocked to the ground. And a lot of people were killed in those buildings. And you'll hear a report, 2 people were minorly injured or just injured a little bit. No, people were killed by the thousands. And there are a lot more people killed in that war than the media wants to talk about, because Biden did a horrible, horrible job. He should have prevented that war. He could have prevented that war. Putin would have never gone in. I'll tell you one thing. He would have never gone in. That war would never have taken place if I were president.
I think what people are trying to understand, Mr. President, is how would the United States, what would you be willing to do to support this European peacekeeping effort? Would there be?
Again, you're asking me the same question? How many times do you have to answer? You're talking about after we make peace. Let me make peace first. Once we make peace, I'll give you all the answers you want. But how many times can you ask the same question?
Is loosening of sanctions on,
Yeah, go ahead. It's behind.
is loosening of sanctions on Russia a potential option as part of?
Not now. No. We have sanctions on Russia. No, I want to see if we make a deal first, but I think we will.
Is it a partnership?
I've had very good conversations with President Putin. I've had very good conversations with President Zelensky, and until 4 weeks ago, nobody had conversations with anybody. It wasn't even a consideration. Nobody thought you could make peace. I think you can.
But if
Mr.
Mr.
President,
Putin gets to
just to
keep
bring
the land that was claimed by force, if the Russians get to keep the territory that they claim by force, doesn't that send a dangerous message, let's say, to China?
Oh, okay. You try and take it away, right? We're gonna do the best we can. We're gonna do the best we can to make the best deal we can for both sides, but for Ukraine, we're gonna try very hard to make a good deal so that they can get as much back as possible. We want to get as much back as possible.
Mr. President, just to bring this
We'll cut it out after maybe this question. Go ahead.
full circle.
Unless it's a
back
bad
to-
question, then we'll get
back
that.
to-
You always like to finish on a good one.
Sir, they want you to negotiate with them instead of
I
with
know.
President Putin.
They want to continue to talk about the peacekeepers. You have a lot of confidence in us because you assume there's going to be peace. You know, it's possible it doesn't work out. There is possibility. But I hope it does for the sake of humanity, because if you look at the pictures that I've looked at, you don't want to look at them. Go ahead.
I have a question back on these cuts to the federal workforce. You mentioned you're interested in doing another round of this email. When would you like to see that? What would be the deadline?
I'm not. I think
mandatory.
Elon wants to, and I think it's a good idea because, you know, those people, as I said before, they're on the bubble. You got a lot of people that have not responded, so we're trying to figure out, do they exist? Who are they? And it's possible that a lot of those people will be actually fired. And if that happened, that's okay, because that's what we're trying to do. This country has gotten bloated and fat and disgusting and incompetently run. I think we had the worst president in the history of our country. He just left office. I think he's a disgrace, what he's done to our country by allowing millions of people to come into our country like that. And all of the other things, the inflation, which he caused because of energy and stupid spending, to spend hundreds of millions, trillions and trillions of dollars on the Green New scam, a total scam. I have the best energy people, the best environmental people in the world around this table, and they can't even believe he got away with it. And then in leaving office to send $20 billion here and $20 million there and 10 million and 5 million, and they couldn't spend the money fast enough, and let's get it out before Trump gets in, let's just get it out to anybody. And this is a disgrace to our nation, and you don't write the fair thing, but look, you know, the good news, the people see it, and that's why we won the election by so much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. I'll be right back here.
They did this, and nobody's ever,
Border crossings though,
Well,
this
that's-
last
well-
month compared to about a year ago.
yeah, they've been good, but that's also due to us, mostly due to us. I mean, it's very hard, it's right now very hard to come through the border, but look, the damage has been done. We've lost millions of people due to fentanyl. It comes mostly from China, but it comes through Mexico and it comes through Canada. And I have to tell you that, you know, on April 2nd, I was going to do it on April 1st, but I'm a little bit superstitious. I made it April 2nd. The tariffs go on, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I think you're going to see something that's going to be amazing. We've been taken advantage of as a country for a long period of time. We've been tariffed, but we didn't tariff. Now, I did, when I was here, we took in $700 billion from China. $700 billion. Not one president in the history of our country took in 10 cents from China. At the same time, China respected us. Now, when COVID came in, that was a different deal. I used to call it the China virus. I guess I can call it the China virus again, but, you know, it's an accurate term, but I won't do that out of respect to China.
And what was immigration enforcement?
Say it again, what?
On Gaza, I just wondered if there's any progress towards the second phase of the ceasefire.
Well, I'm very disappointed when I see four bodies came in today. These are young people. Young people don't die, okay? Young people don't die. These are young people. 4 bodies came in today. They think they're doing us a favor by sending us bodies. So, look, that's a decision has to be made by Israel, by Bibi, but Israel has to make that decision. We got a lot of hostages back. But it's very sad what happened to those people. I mean, you had a young lady with her hand practically blown off. You know why it blew up? Because she put up her hand to try and stop a bullet that was coming her way. And it hit her hand and blew off her fingers, big part of her hand. This is a vicious group of people. And Israel's going to have to decide what they're doing. Phase 1 is going to be ending. Think of it, today they sent in 4 bodies. Bodies. And I will say one thing, though. I've spoken to a lot of the parents and a lot of the people involved. They want those bodies almost as much and maybe even just as much as they wanted their son or their daughter. Amazing. Please, sir, please, my son is dead, but they have his body. Please, can you get it for us? It's the biggest thing It's incredible, the level, they want the bodies of these people, they're dead. And, you know, when I saw the ones that came in 2 weeks ago, they looked like they just got out of a concentration camp. Then the following week, a group came in and they weren't as bad, in as bad a shape. But Israel's gonna have to make a decision. You're right, phase 1 and now phase 2 has started. And today we got some, you know, very, we knew they were dead, by the way. We knew that they were gonna be bodies as opposed to people that were living. But it's a very sad situation. At some point, somebody's gonna say, we gotta do something about this.
Mr. President, we're just talking about Afghanistan and the botched withdrawal. Have all the generals or command staff that were involved with the withdrawal been fired or relieved of duty?
Well, that's a great idea. I'm not gonna tell this man what to do, but I will say that. If I had his place, I'd fire every single one of them, Pete. Pete, that's a very good question.
Well, it's a question we've thought a lot about. We're doing a complete review of every single aspect of what happened with the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan and plan to have full accountability. It's one of the first things we announced at the Defense Department for that reason, sir. Certainly, General Raisin Kane, who's on his way in, was not a part of that. Instead, was a part of leading the effort against ISIS by untying the hands of warfighters and finishing the job properly and then bringing our troops home. So we're taking a very different view, obviously, than the previous administration, and there will be full accountability.
I don't see big promotions in that group. And I think they're gonna be largely gone. I know the man on my left, I think they're gonna be largely gone. That was a horrible display. And, you know, I've dealt with the parents and the family of the 13 that were killed, but, you know, nobody ever talks about the 40 that were so badly hurt with the arms and the legs and the face and the whole thing, the missing arms and legs. It was so terrible the way that was handled. And it should have been gone through Bagram. We have a big base with big fences and nobody can get in, and you have, you know, hundreds of acres instead of a little local airport where the whole place went crazy. That was so badly handled, and I would think that most of those people are gonna be gone.
Are we gonna take Bagram back?
So I'll tell you what has bothered me very much, very much. We give billions of dollars to Afghanistan. Nobody knows that. Nobody knew that. Do you know we give billions of dollars to Afghanistan? And yet we left behind all of that equipment, which wouldn't have happened. You know, we were getting out under me. I'm the one that got it down to 5,000 people. We were going to get out, but we were going to keep Bagram, not because of Afghanistan, but because of China, because it's exactly 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear missiles. So they were going to keep Bagram. We were going to keep a small force on Bagram. We were going to have Bagram Air Base, one of the biggest air bases in the world, one of the biggest runways, one of the most powerful runways in the sense that it was very heavy concrete and steel. You could carry about anything. You could land anything on those runways. We gave it up. And you know who's occupying it right now? China. Biden gave it up. So we're going to keep that, and we're going to have a withdrawal, and we're going to take our equipment. We're going to do it properly. We're going to do it we're going to keep the equipment. Well, they ran out. It was, what happened there was, in fact, you know, in all fairness to Putin, when he saw that, he said, well, this is our time to go into Ukraine, I guess, because it was, the timing seemed to be about right. But we send them billions of dollars in aid, which nobody knows. If the American public knew that, they know it now. And if we're doing that, I think they should give our equipment back. And I told Pete to study that. But we left billions, tens of billions of dollars worth of equipment behind. Brand new trucks. You see them display it every year on their little roadway someplace where they have a road and they drive the, you know, waving the flag and talking about America. Beautiful equipment that's all, I mean, the top of the line stuff, brand new stuff. Now it's getting older. But you know what? We're going to pay them. I think we should get a lot of that equipment back. You know that Afghanistan is one of the biggest sellers of military equipment in the world. You know why? They're selling the equipment that we left. We're first. They were second or third. Can you believe it? They're selling 777,000 rifles, 70,000 armor-plated. Many of them were armor-plated trucks and vehicles. 70,000. If you think of a used car lot, the biggest one in the country, if I would say, JD, if somebody had 500 cars, that would be a lot. This is 70,000 vehicles we had there, and we left it for them. I think we should get it back.
Mr.
Mr.
President,
President,
President
the
Eric
spending
Prince
bill
of the-
that passed last night aims to cut $2 trillion.
Right.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question, okay? This will not be read my lips. It won't be read my lips anymore. We're not gonna touch it. Now, we are gonna look for fraud. I'm sure you're okay with that, like people that shouldn't be on, people that are illegal aliens and others, criminals in many cases. And that's with Social Security. We have a lot of people, you see that immediately when you see people that are 200 years old that are being sent checks for Social Security. Some of them are actually being sent checks, so we're tracing that down, and I have a feeling that Pam is going to do a very good job with that. But you have a lot of fraud. But no, we're not doing anything on that.
Mr. President, part of your mission,
Mr.
sir,
President,
part of your mission has
litigation.
been, thank you, I'm sorry. Part of your mission has been to restore executive control over the executive branch. Is it your view of your authority that you have the power to call up any one of, or all of the people seated at this table and issue orders that they're bound to follow?
Oh, yeah, they'll follow the orders, yes, they will.
No exceptions.
No exception. Well, let's see, let me think. Oh, yeah. She'll have an exception. Of course, no exceptions. You know that.
Mr. President, can you clarify the Canada-Mexico tariffs? You had put that 30-day pause.
Yeah.
You just referred to.
25%,
25%. When does it go into effect?
April 2nd,
April 2nd for Canada-Mexico.
correct. And for,
the
and for everything.
Well, we have the fentanyl-related is a pause. If they can prove to the president they've done an excellent job, that's what they first do in 30
Have you
days.
guys seen any
But then the
change?
overall is April 2nd. So the big transaction is April 2nd, but the fentanyl-related things, they're working hard on the border. At the end of that 30 days, they have to prove to the president that they've satisfied him to that regard. If they have,
It's gonna be
then
hard
he'll
to
give them a pause, or he won't. But
It's going
that's
to be
up to
hard
him
to
to see.
satisfy. We lose 300,000 people a year to fentanyl. Not 100, not 95, not 60 like you read, you've been reading it for years. We lost, in my opinion, over the last couple of years, on average, maybe close to 300,000 people dead. And the families are ruined, when they lose a daughter, when they lose a son, the families are never the same. You're never going to be the same. So you're talking about 1 million people. But when the daughters die, I see it, daughters die and the sons die because of fentanyl. And in some cases, I don't even know they're taking it. They're buying something else and it's laced with fentanyl and they end up dying. And I've known many people who've lost children to fentanyl and for other reasons, but to fentanyl, it's such a big killer. And those people are never the same people. I mean, I've seen people that for the rest of their lives, they're not the same people. They're so different, it's not even believable. Dynamic people, happy people they die a miserable death. And that's because of the crap that comes in through China and through Mexico and through Canada. A lot of it comes through Canada. Look, we support Canada. $200 billion a year in subsidies, one way or the other. We let them make millions of cars. We let them send us lumber. We don't need their lumber. We're going to free up our lumber. Lee's going to do the head of environmental. We're going to free up our lumber. We have the best lumber there is. We don't need their lumber. What do we need their lumber for? When you look at we subsidize them $200 billion a year. Without us, Canada can't make it. Canada relies on us 95%. We rely on them 4%. Big difference. And I say Canada should be our 51st state. There's no tariffs, no nothing. And I say that we give them military protection. They have a very small military. They spend very little money on military. On NATO, they're just about last in terms of payment because they say, why should we spend on military? That's a tremendous cost. Most nations can't afford to even think about it. Why should we spend on military? The United States protects us. And I would say that's largely true. We protect Canada, but it's not fair. It's not fair that they're not paying their way. And if they had to pay their way, they couldn't exist. When I spoke to, let's call it the Prime Minister rather than the governor, but when I spoke to him, I said, why are we giving you $200 billion a year? He was unable to answer the question. I said, why are we letting you make millions of cars and send them in. He was unable to answer the question. Justin Trudeau, a nice guy. I think he's a very good guy. I call him Governor Trudeau. He should be governor, because the fact is that if we don't give them cars, we don't have to give them cars. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell cars into the United States. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell lumber or anything else into the United States. And all I'm asking to do is break even or lose a little bit, but not lose 200 billion. And if we don't support them, they don't subsist as a nation. Okay?
Mr. President, on the EU tariffs, Mr. President, have you made a decision on what level you will seek on tariffs in the European Union?
We have made a decision. We'll be announcing it very soon, and it'll be 25%, generally speaking, and that'll be on cars and all of the things. And European Union is a different case than Canada, different kind of case. They've really taken advantage of us in a different way. They don't accept our cars. They don't accept essentially our farm products. They use all sorts of reasons why not. And we accept everything of them, and we have about a $300 billion deficit with the European Union. Now, I love the countries of Europe. I guess I'm from there at some point a long time ago, right? But indirectly, pretty directly too, I guess. But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
What will happen if these countries where the EU retaliate?
They can't. I mean, they can try, but they can't.
China did, they
They're
imposed
pledging to,
tariffs
sir.
that went into effect. China's
That's
retaliatory
right,
tariff
that's
on
right, but-
the 10th of February. Has there been any
That's
impact
right.
you've been able to observe?
That's right. Now, they can do it, and they can try, but the numbers can never equal what ours, because we can go off. We are the pot of gold. We're the one that everybody wants, and they can retaliate, but it cannot be a successful retaliation, because we just go cold turkey. We don't buy anymore, and if that happens, we win.
Are you talking to Eric Prince about privatizing deportation?
No, I haven't.
Mr. President, you're in litigation with CDS News. Is this a case that you'd like to see go to trial, or are you open?
With
to
who?
CDS, the 60 minutes.
CBS? Well, CBS did something that was amazing. Kamala was unable to answer a question properly, and they took the question that they asked and they inserted an answer. They gave her an answer. This was 2 days before the election, right before the Sunday night before the election. And they wrote out they put her words from another question that was asked about a half an hour later, and they put that into the question. Nobody's ever even heard of it before. Nobody's ever heard of anything like this before, but they then did it, they say, on numerous occasions. And the FCC is looking at it very strongly, and everybody's looking at it, but nobody's ever seen anything. Think of it, they took her answers and they changed them. And I don't mean they changed a word or two, or they cut off a half a sentence, or they cut off a couple of words. I mean, I've had that happen too, but that you just say, then they say, well, we want brevity. We wanted to do it for time. They took out her answer and they inserted an entirely different answer that made her sound competent. And they did this, and nobody's ever, I thought I've heard of everything when it comes to that stuff. No, I've never heard of it. Nobody's ever seen. So we sued, and we are in discussions of settlement.
What would a number be, like what's a number that you would?
I think it's a lot. No, I mean, it could have, it probably did affect the election. I mean, we won by a lot. As I said, too big to rig, but it probably did affect the election. Probably could have won by more, but I could have lost the election because of that. We have to get to honest elections. We have to go back to paper ballots. We have to go back to voter ID. One-day election ideally, or short term, not these 48-day and 61-day elections where boxes are put in a room and, let's move the boxes because we're putting in a new air conditioning system. Then you see the boxes move, and then you say, well, where are all the boxes? What happened to the boxes that never came back? Now, our elections are extremely dishonest. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in voting and all of these different things that we put in. No other country in the world has it. You know, France went to, they had some of the things that we had, and they went to same-day voting, all paper. And, you know, paper is very sophisticated now. It's a very sophisticated form of voting right now. It's a very safe form of voting. You know, the other things for the governors, I wish the governors would do it, because the paper ballots will cost 9% of the machines, and they're 100%. You know, nothing's foolproof, but they're as close as you get. So we'll see what happens. But on the 60-minute thing, nobody's ever seen anything like it.
Would you link the FCC action to the litigation?
And I don't think it's linked, but probably the lawyers look at it, you know, because I know it's going along. FCC is headed by a very competent person, and you have some very competent people on the board, and so I think they're looking at it very seriously.
So
Yeah.
of all the deals that you've done in your life, all the people you've sat across from and negotiated with, is President Putin distinct in any way?
He's a very smart guy. He's a very cunning person, but I've dealt with some people I've dealt with some really bad people. But I will tell you, as far as this is concerned, you have to understand, he had no intention, in my opinion, of settling this war. I think he wanted the whole thing. When I got elected, we spoke, and I think we're going to have a deal. I can't guarantee that. You know, a deal is a deal. Lots of crazy things happen in deals, right? But I think we're going to have a deal. If I didn't get elected, I believe he would have just continued to go through Ukraine, and over a period of time, a lot of people would have been killed, would have lasted for a period of time. And the reason that Ukraine, and I have great respect for the Ukraine as fighters, they're great fighters, but without our equipment, that war would have been over, like people said, in a very short period of time.
Is there a time?
And if you remember, I gave the javelins, and the javelins are the things that knocked out those tanks right at the beginning of the war. They said that Obama, at the time, gave sheets, and Trump gave javelins. Well, I was the one that did that, but I want to see it come to an end.
Will he have to make concessions, President Putin?
Yeah, he will. He's going to have to. And I believe that because we got elected, that war will come to an end. And I also believe if we didn't get elected, if this administration didn't win the election by a lot, that war would go on for a long time, and he would want to take the whole thing. Because the big question I had is, does he want to take the whole thing? But the reason, and the Ukrainians are good fighters, I have to say, but without the equipment, without our equipment, we have the best equipment in the world. We have the best military equipment in the world. Without our equipment, that would have been over very quickly.
What concessions would you like to see? What concessions would you like to see?
Oh, I don't want to tell it right now, but I can tell you that NATO you can forget about. I think that's probably the reason the whole thing started. And I think, JD, we can say that. Do you have a statement on that? You've been very much involved. I gave him the beauty.
Great. Maybe the hardest question, sir. I mean, look, as the president said, we're not going to do the negotiation in public with the American media. He's going to do it in private with the president of Russia, with the president of Ukraine, and with other leaders. And I think that's how this has to go. I think I just want to push back against some of the criticism I've seen of the administration on this, because every single time the president engages in diplomacy, you guys preemptively accuse him of conceding to Russia. He hasn't conceded anything to anyone. He's doing the job of a diplomat, and he is, of course, the diplomat in chief as the President of the United States.
What's the goal card, sir? Can you talk a little bit more about the vetting process?
He'll go through a process. The process is being worked out right now, and we're going to be very careful.
Will there be restrictions on, for instance, can Chinese nationals get
No, we're
votes?
not going to
Iranian
restrict.
nationals
We're
get
probably not going to be restricting too much in terms of countries, but maybe in terms of individuals. We want to make sure we have people that love our country and are capable of loving the country.
There's a measles outbreak in Texas at the moment in which a child is reported to have died. Do you have concerns about that? And have you asked Secretary Kennedy to look into that?
Well, why don't we, Bobby, you want to speak on that?
We are following the measles epidemic every day. I think there's 124 people who have contracted measles at this point, mainly in Gaines County, Texas. Mainly we're told in the Mennonite community, there are 2 people who have died, but we're watching it, and there are about 20 people hospitalized, mainly for quarantine. We're watching it. We put out a post on it yesterday, and we're going to continue to follow it. Incidentally, there have been 4 measles outbreaks this year in this country. Last year, there were 16. So it's not unusual. We have measles outbreaks every year.
You sound a little under the weather yourself, but.
I have a permanently bad throat.
Mr. President, would you send U.S. peacekeepers to support the European peacekeepers? Would you do any sort of U.S.?
No, we're going to support Europe, yeah.
And how would you?
We're very friendly with Europe. We have a great relationship with Europe. I mean, you could you could talk about France, you could talk about any of them. I mean, we have a great relationship with Europe.
But how will the United States do that? Would there be?
Well, how? I mean, you're asking me a question, what are we doing in the field? Let's worry. I hope we have that problem where we could worry about peacekeeping. We got to get there first, but I hope we have the problem of worrying about peacekeeping. That'll be the easiest problem, I think, JD, that we've ever had.
That would be part of the deal, presumably.
We'll do it at the time, but peacekeeping is very easy. It's making the deal that's very tough. And again, nobody was speaking to Russia at all. And, probably 1.5 million soldiers have been killed, close to 1.5 million soldiers, not to mention I will tell you, the thing with that horrible war that should have never started would have never started if I were president. And it didn't start for 4 years, and it was not even thought about starting. But the thing with that war is that you're highly underestimating the number of people.
On the global economy, which is why so many businesses across the country are on edge. I've been speaking to many of those business owners today. They are concerned not just about these tariffs, but all of this uncertainty.
All right. Well, Alexis, Trump seems to be deliberately making this announcement at 4 p.m. Eastern time, right as the stock market closes. What did you make of the numbers since it opened this morning and just watching the big board throughout the day?
Yeah, I have to think that decision to make this announcement after the market closes was a deliberate one. We know that the market has been on this roller coaster ride ever since President Trump started talking about these tariffs in a big way back in February. And today was another roller coaster. We started the day down about 350 points on the Dow. And now, with moments to go before the close, we're up by about 300 points. Investors want clarity here. They want to understand how widespread these tariffs are going to be so that they can try to understand the implications for the economy, for businesses, and for consumers. Some analysts I've been talking to say the worst case scenario for Wall Street would be that blanket 20% tariffs across the board. They say that comes with some serious consequences. They believe it would mean a recession that would last at least a year and an unemployment rate of about 7%, Kira.
All right. Well, Jay, we saw you going to actually grab reaction from a lawmaker that was right behind you after we talked earlier in the hour. Did you get any new reaction from any of those flocking in the hallway?
We did, Kira. We call that foreshadowing, right? I walked away on camera, away from you, for which I apologize. But we did speak with Senator John Kennedy, who acknowledged what a number of Republicans have acknowledged, that there might be an initially rocky term or some immediate economic pain after these tariffs are announced because higher prices are likely and things of that nature. We've even heard Speaker Johnson say that he believes the near term after these tariffs are announced might be, quote unquote, rocky is the word that he used. Here's a little bit more of what John Kennedy said. I'll caution you. He said he agrees with Trump in principle on tariffs. Rather, we don't have that soundbite, but I'll tell you what he said. He said he agrees with President Trump in principle on tariffs, but that in the short term, again, there might be some economic pain. But we have seen some Republicans, just a few, come out in fully against this. Rand Paul, for instance, says he believes these promised tariffs on Canada would cause a recession, Karen.
All right. Selena? Alexis, Jay, thank you all so much. We will once again have full coverage of the president's announcement. It is just seconds away. It'll be happening right here on ABC News Live. Stay with us. You can watch the entire thing along with us. The news never stops. You can find us anywhere you stream live news. And if you're on the go, we are on the ABC News app and abcnews.com as well. I'm Kira Phillips. So glad you're streaming with us. Live pictures from the Rose Garden there at the White House as we wait for the president to step up to the mic and talk tariffs. A lot more news up next. Stay with us.
Whenever, wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas, Edinburgh, Scotland.
From Poland once again tonight. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw.
Do you think you'll ever be able to go back home? We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City.
Splintered houses and splintered lives. The magnitude of the devastation. You're streaming ABC News Live. Reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi.
Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Raleigh, North Carolina.
The U.S. Capitol.
Mayfield, Kentucky.
Minneapolis.
Mexico. Tongass National Forest, Alaska.
Getting you behind the stories as they happen. Giving you a front row seat to our world as it plays out in real time, live. ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights, America's most honored streaming news program, only on ABC News Live. Streaming free right now wherever you stream your news.
Give me the eyes that say, I love to do it, and that's what I'm about.
I joined a dating app. You're immunocompromised. You can't just sleep with strangers.
I want to feel things.
Are you on some kind of sex quest?
A sex quest?
You can expect decreased libido.
That doesn't work with Molly's goals. What else do you guys have?
Now you can listen to a podcast version of Good Morning America, available free wherever you listen. You're watching America's #1 streaming news. Keep streaming with ABC News Live.
Look. What is this?
It's the most important box in the world. This box contains all.
Reporting from the wildfires in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, I'm Stephanie Ramos. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
I'm Kenny Whitworth here in Los Angeles, and we begin now with breaking news. We're, of course, awaiting a major tariff announcement from President Trump and what could be his most consequential move since taking office in January. Wall Street a bit optimistic ahead of the announcement. Just now, stocks closing a little higher before these sweeping tariffs go into effect. Now, the president will take the podium in the White House Rose Garden any minute from now. Trump is expected to outline what he says are his most aggressive tariffs yet. And there you see the official closing of the bell. Reciprocal taxes targeting America's trade partners all around the world. We've certainly been anticipating this for some time now. And again, you're taking a look at the Rose Garden here, where there's a lot of anticipation ahead of this big announcement. And he was waiting purposely until the markets closed to do so. Joining me right now is our ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang, along with ABC News business reporter Alexis Christophos, ABC News political director Avery Harper, and ABC News senior reporter Catherine Felder. There's a lot to cover here. So, Selena, let's start with you. The White House still keeping a tight lid on what these new tariffs will entail, even though we're just minutes away. But they are promising it to be a landmark day for our nation. Any idea of what we can really expect from the president, Selena?
Yeah, the president about to take the stage any moment now, to your point, but we still have so many questions about the details here. We still don't know the scope, the size of these tariffs, or what countries the president is going to be targeting. But what the president has said is that this is going to be his most aggressive tariff plan yet. He said that these tariffs are going to stop other countries from, quote, ripping us off. It's going to stop them from taking advantage of the U.S. when it comes to trade. Now, but just as a few hours ago, we were hearing that behind the scenes, White House officials and the president and his top advisors, they were still trying to come to some sort of agreement on what this strategy was going to look like. They were still hashing out those final details. So this is really coming down to to The Wire. But sources close to the president told me that in recent weeks, the president has been weighing several different possibilities. That includes a blanket tariff in all imports. Another possibility was matching tariff rates, customizing the rate to each country depending on the trade barriers that they impose on U.S. products. Administration officials have also talked about zeroing in and focusing these tariffs on the worst offenders, the countries with the biggest trade imbalances with the U.S. But regardless, Kana, these tariffs are expected to upend the global trading system, which is why you're seeing so many jitters from the markets, investors, and from American businesses. I've been speaking to some of those small business owners who say all of this uncertainty is bad for business. They don't know how to make decisions when they don't know what the cost of their inputs are going to be in the next day, week, or month, not to mention that many of those businesses already preparing to raise prices. They tell me that they just can't absorb those higher tariffs. They just don't have the margins for it.
The uncertainty over the specifics of all of this certainly seems to be looming large. So, Alexis, let's talk a bit about the stock market here. The stock market closing today on a high note, if you will, ahead of the president's tariff rollout. But we know you have to watch the stock market in moments like this, not just day by day, but hour by hour, and also quarterly. The S&P and NASDAQ had their first quarterly loss since 2022. But what do you make of the closing today, especially knowing that the president purposely wanted to wait until it closed to make this announcement?
I'm not really surprised that we saw a bit of a bounce back today. Analysts I've been emailing with today call it a false bounce back because stocks have been beaten down so badly. You just said, our worst quarter for the market since 2022, that a lot of stocks look attractive at these levels. So investors were coming in and buying ahead of that announcement from Trump. The market's still looking for clarity. We know the stock market doesn't like uncertainty, and we've just been living in this uncertain environment now for weeks. Some analysts, though, are telling me they believe the market is underestimating the impact these tariffs may have. There are still investors out there who believe that Trump is not going to see these tariffs all the way through, that they are at the end of the day a negotiating tactic, and that he would not allow them to have a severe drag on the economy, that if he were to see that happening, he would start to pull back on those tariffs. Those are a lot of ifs out there right now, Kana. So what we're seeing is people are betting that clarity will bring stability to the market, but we're not sure because we still have those retaliatory tariffs. Remember, these countries are going to have to answer back to whatever Trump puts out there today. We don't know what that's going to mean for corporate profits, what that's going to mean for the health of industries here in the U.S.
Right, we're seeing some overseas markets. It looks like they're coming together. We've heard from Mexico's president saying she doesn't want to do a tit for tat, but you're right. We don't really know how these other countries are going to retaliate. As you're watching the video here again, we are awaiting the announcement from the president, and you can see everyone is gathered there in the Rose Garden. But Alexis, I think we just saw J.D. Vance. Oh, there he is. There's J.D. Vance shaking hands, glad-handing some folks that are clearly there in support of the president. Alexis, can I ask you one other quick question here? There was some terminology that came across my desk today, is that some investors consider what's happening right now in the market a bit of a clearing event. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely, Kana. So what happens is stocks are down so much. I mean, just take a look at this. The S&P 500, tied to lots of people's retirement funds, down 8% from the record high we saw back in February. The NASDAQ, which is home to many big tech companies like Meta, Amazon, Alphabet, down 14% since the high we saw back in February. When you have stocks that have been so richly valued come down so fast, it's just too good of an opportunity for a lot of institutional investors and just regular investors to pass up. So we're sort of seeing this clearing in the market right now where they're sort of, deciphering who may be the winners, if at all, from these tariffs. For Wall Street, from where they stand, a more targeted approach from the president would be the way to go because the pain would presumably be less spread out. It wouldn't affect all parts of our economy. So a lot depends on what we're going to hear in the next few minutes. But at least for today, investors felt that safe to come back into the market at these levels ahead of that announcement.
Interesting. All right, Alexis, thank you. And Catherine, as we're watching all of this play out here, we know that the president was meeting with his advisors, his so-called tariff team, if you will. And because we're so sparse on details, there was some reporting that even his closest advisors didn't know the specifics of this. But Catherine, in this moment leading up, I mean, who really has the president's ear right now?
Well, it's a good question because, as you know, there's multiple different advisors who Trump has been consulting on the tariffs. And
Sorry, because we're going to send it to David
right
Muir and the Powerhouse Political Team for special coverage here.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're coming on the air for what will likely be another defining moment in President Trump's second term. Just moments from now, the president is expected to unveil his sweeping tariff plan, which has been raising economic anxiety here in the U.S. and around the world. You can see the president right there emerging in the Rose Garden. In what's designed today to be a major event at the White House, the president is expected to unveil these new tariffs targeting many of America's trade partners. The president's cabinet and Republican leaders are attending the event right there in the Rose Garden. The White House has said the new tariffs will take effect immediately. The administration has given no real indication about the scope of the tariffs before this moment, percentages or the countries being targeted. Just this morning, a senior administration official telling ABC News, quote, "It's still all very fluid." It's believed to be an aggressive plan here, which will include tariffs on some of America's closest allies.
Thank you very much.
Let's listen to the president.
Thank you. Nice crowd. What a good-looking group of people. Well, we have some very, very good news today, and a lot of good things are happening for our country. Please sit down. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. Going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steel workers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen, we have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. We had an American dream that you don't hear so much about. You did 4 years ago, and you are now, but you don't too often, and for many years and decades even, you didn't hear too much about. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple. It can't get any simpler than that. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly. With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again, greater than ever before. Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. And ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back, and we're going to come back very strongly. We're pleased to be joined on this momentous occasion by Vice President J.D. Vance. J.D., thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where are you, J.D.? No, that wasn't too hard to find. I was looking, you know, he likes to take a low-key attitude, so usually we sit right in front. He's gaining a lot of confidence, Mike, isn't he? And nearly my entire cabinet is here, as well as Speaker Mike Johnson, who's done an amazing job. And with the great success we had last night in Florida, we have a majority of 7 And 7's like a lot when we had it at 1, right? You've done a fantastic job. And many of the members of the House and Senate are with us. Senators, congressmen, thank you all for being with us. We appreciate it. For decades, the United States slashed our trade barriers on other countries while those nations placed massive tariffs on our products and created outrageous non-monetary barriers to decimate our industries. And in many cases, the non-monetary barriers were worse than the monetary ones. They manipulated their currencies, subsidized their exports, stole our intellectual property, imposed exorbitant VAT taxes to disadvantage our products, adopted unfair rules and technical standards, and created filthy pollution havens. They were absolutely filthy, but they always came to us and they said, we're violating, we should pay for it. It's all detailed in a very big report by the U.S. Trade Representative on Foreign Trade Barriers, and I'll just hold it up for you. It's available, and you don't have to pay too much. As I understand it, you'll pay nothing. It's a lot of work for something, actually, because it's a special book. It's very, frankly, it's very upsetting when you read it, when you see what people have been doing to us for 30 years. This all happened with no response from the United States of America, none whatsoever. But those days are over. Let me offer just a few examples of the vicious attacks our workers have faced for so many years. The United States charges other countries only a 2.4 tariff on motorcycles. Meanwhile, Thailand and others are charging much higher prices, like 60%. India charges 70%. Vietnam charges 75%, and others are even higher than that. Likewise, until today, the United States has for decades charged a 2.5 tariff. Think of that, 2.5% on foreign-made automobiles. The European Union charges us more than 10% tariffs, and they have 20% VATs, much, much higher. India charges 70%, and perhaps worst of all are the non-monetary restrictions imposed by South Korea, Japan, and very many other nations. As a result of these colossal trade barriers, 81% of the cars in South Korea are made in South Korea. 94% of the cars in Japan are made in Japan. Toyota sells 1 million foreign-made automobiles into the United States, and General Motors sells almost none. Ford sells very little. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that, friend and foe, and in many cases, the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade. But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles. Thank you. Brian, I'd like to have you come up here for a second, okay? I just see him sitting. He's been a fan of ours, and he understands this business a lot better than the economists, a lot better than anybody. Brian, say a few words, please, would you?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. It's a great honor to have you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I grew up just north of Detroit, Michigan, in Macomb County, known as the home of the Reagan Democrats. My first vote for president was for Ronald Reagan. I thought that was going to be the best president I ever saw in my lifetime until Donald J. Trump came along. I have watched my entire life, I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized, and Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. And the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me, they're sitting right over here. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%. So, Mr. President, we can't thank you enough. And in 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
What a great guy. He got it right from the beginning. He got it before almost anybody else. This group over there, they got it too. And, you know, we won the state of Michigan. We won almost all of them. But we won Michigan by a lot, and I want to just thank you all. The auto workers were fantastic. The Teamsters were fantastic. Everyone was pretty good, I will tell you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're going to be very happy very soon, and you probably see what's happening with all of the, not only car companies, but car companies in particular. You see it with all of the ones they're moving, they're announcing day in, day out. You're seeing it. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. With today's actions, we're also standing up for our great farmers and ranchers who are brutalized by nations all over the world. Brutalized. Canada, by the way, imposes a 250 to 300% tariff on many of our dairy products. They do the first can of milk. They do the first little carton of milk at a very low price, but after that it gets bad, and then it gets up to 275, 300%. So when they're figuring what's Canada charging, they say, oh, about 2%, 3%. But take a look at what happens down the road. When you look a little bit, it's not a pretty picture, and we don't like it, and it's not fair. It's not fair to our farmers. It's not fair to our country. And with countries like Canada, you know, we subsidize a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. In the case of Mexico, it's $300 billion a year. In the case of Canada, it's close to $200 billion a year. And I say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, at what point do we say you got to work for yourselves, and you got to, this is why we have the big deficits. This is why we have that amount of debt that's been placed on our heads over the last number of years, and we're really not taking it anymore. Through non-tariff barriers, the European Union bans imports of most American poultry. You understand? They say, we want to send you our cars, we want to send you everything, but we're not going to take anything that you have. Australia bans, and they're wonderful people and wonderful everything, but they ban American beef, yet we imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone. They won't take any of our beef. They don't want it because they don't want it to affect their farmers. And you know what? I don't blame them, but we're doing the same thing right now, starting about midnight tonight, I would say. And China charges American rice farmers an overquota, it's called, a tariff rate of 65%. South Korea charges 50%. Actually, they charge different, from 50% to 513%. And Japan, our friend, charges us 700%. But that's because they don't want us selling rice, another thing. Who can blame them, Madam Secretary? Agriculture, great job you did on eggs, by the way. The egg prices came down 50%. You got them down 50%. Once we got involved, they were going through the sky. The egg prices, they were going through the sky, and you did a fantastic job. Now we have lots of eggs, and they're much cheaper, down about 59% now, and they're going down further. We charge 2.8% for so many things that other countries are charging 200%, 300%, and 400% for. If imposing tariffs and protective barriers made nations poor, then every country on earth would be racing to eliminate these policies, and China would be the first on line. They run a very strong country, but they're not first in line, and the American people are paying a very big price. From 1789 to 1913, we were a tariff-backed nation, and the United States was proportionately the wealthiest it has ever been. So wealthy, in fact, that in the 1880s, they established a commission to decide what they were going to do with the vast sums of money they were collecting. We were collecting so much money so fast, we didn't know what to do with it. Isn't that a nice problem to have? What do you think, Marco? Good problem? Marco would love that problem. But we don't have that problem anymore, but we're not going to have it very much longer, I will tell you. But they collected so much money, they actually formed a commission to determine what they were going to do with the money, who they were going to give it to, and how much. Then in 1913, for reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax so that citizens, rather than foreign countries, would start paying the money necessary to run our government. Then in 1929, it all came to a very abrupt end with the Great Depression, and it would have never happened if they had stayed with the tariff policy. It would have been a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country, but it was gone. It was gone. It was too late. Nothing could have been done. It took years and years to get out of that depression, far longer than even FDR had that office right over there for a long period of time. The ramp system, that's rather intricate, was built because of him, and every time you walk up, you think of him, and he did a great job in many ways, but it lasted long beyond his terms, as you know. But it's not too late any longer, and we're going to start being smart, and we're going to start being very wealthy again. We're going to be wealthy as a country because they've taken so much of our wealth away from us. We're not going to let that happen. We truly can be very wealthy. We can be so much wealthier than any country. It's not even believable, but we're getting smart. Nearly a century later, in the face of unrelenting economic warfare, the United States can no longer continue with a policy of unilateral economic surrender. We cannot pay the deficits of Canada, Mexico, and so many other countries. We used to do it. We can't do it anymore. We take care of countries all over the world. We pay for their military. We pay for everything they have to pay, and then when you want to cut back a little bit, they get upset that you're not taking care of them any longer. But we have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first, and I'm sorry to say that. And today we're standing up for the American worker, and we are finally putting America first. In sleepy Joe Biden's last year in office, the United States hemorrhaged 100,000 manufacturing jobs, and the number was going through the roof at levels never seen before. And our trade deficit reached a record $1.2 trillion, which is unheard of. Since the beginning of NAFTA, the worst trade deal ever made, it was a horror show. I was able to terminate it. They all said you'd never be able to get it out. We had to get approval from Congress to get it terminated. We had to live with that deal. It was the worst trade deal ever made by far. But since the very beginning of NAFTA, our country lost 90,000 factories. Think of what that is, 90,000. Think about putting a map up and putting tax on it. You wouldn't have enough room. 90,000. I said, is that possible? We had it checked 4 different times, and it was actually somewhat higher than that. And 5 million manufacturing jobs were lost while racking up trade deficits of $19 trillion. That was the worst trade deal ever made. As a result of these gigantic losses, foreign nations now own $26 trillion more of American assets than the Americans own of their own foreign assets or other foreign assets. The United States can no longer produce enough antibiotics to treat our sick. We have a tremendous problem. We have to go to foreign countries to treat our sick. If anything ever happened from a war standpoint, we wouldn't be able to do it. We import virtually all of our computers, phones, televisions, and electronics. We used to dominate the field, and now we import it all from different countries. A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. And for these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. We used to think about it a lot. We didn't think about it for many decades, and you see what's happened. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. And because we are being very kind, we're kind people, very kind. You're not so kind when you got ripped off with your salaries. My auto worker friends and my Teamster friends and all of the unions that typically voted Democrat, they're not voting Democrat anymore because worker, whether union or non-worker, they're for the Republicans now. That's what happened. But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So The tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. Could you bring it up, Howard? This is our great Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. Thanks, Howard. So if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff. Taiwan, where they took all of our computer chips and semiconductors. We used to be the king, right? We were everything. We had all of it. Now we have almost none of it, except the biggest company is coming in. We're going to end up with almost 40%. Lee Zeldin's working to get their approvals. And it's an amazing company. Mr. Wei, of one of the great companies of the world, actually. They're coming in from Taiwan, and they're going to build one of the biggest plants in the world, maybe the biggest for that. But 64%, we're going to charge them 32%. Japan, very, very tough. Great people. And again, I don't blame the people for doing it. I think they're very smart in doing it. I blame the people that sat right in that Oval Office, right over there, right behind the Resolute desk or whichever desk they chose. Japan, 46%. They would charge us 46%, and much higher for certain items like cars, you know, little items like cars. 46%, we're charging them 24%. India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left. He's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades. And it was only 7 years ago when I came in, we started with China and charged them. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China in tariffs. And they understood, honestly. President Xi understood. He said, look, I understand. And the other countries, and they all understand. We're going to have to go through a little tough love, maybe, but they all understand. They're ripping us off, and they understood it. Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. He was a fantastic man. He was unfortunately taken from us, assassination. But I went to him and I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. A trade is not fair. He said, I know that, I know that. And he was a great gentleman. He was a fantastic man, but he understood immediately what I was talking about. I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. He said, I know that. And we worked out a deal, and it would have been a much better deal, but frankly, there were many years left on the deal that was made previous to my getting there, but it was something. If you look at Switzerland, 61% to 31%. Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. Oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. We're going to bring it down to 49. They made a fortune with the United States of America. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it. Brazil, 10%, 10%. Bangladesh is 74%. So you see what's going on. Pakistan, 58%. Sri Lanka, 88%. So what we're doing is we're taking Not the full. We could take the full 88%. Thanks a lot, Harold. He's doing a very good job. How's he doing, all right? I think you better take it with you. It's not going to last very long. He's going to put it, it's going to follow you down with the wind. I brought a hat just in case it got too windy, but here, would anybody like a hat? I'm not giving it to a cabinet. I'm giving it to the auto workers. Come here. Thank you, fellas. Get it. That's it. That's it. They deserve it more than our cabinet. Our cabinet has plenty of hats. But you see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart. And that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate because the money is so enormous that you're talking about. There's never been probably anything like it in terms of the enormity, and there are a lot of bad things happen at the people that do the check-in, and they're looking at 10-year jail sentences if they do play. We're going to treat them so good, but if they cheat, the repercussions are going to be extremely strong. Foreign nations will finally be asked to pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world. We're right now the biggest market in the world. We had a great country 4 years ago in terms of the economics. We were doubling up on China. We were doing so well. Nobody was going to catch us, but so much of it slipped away over the last 4 years under Biden. I campaigned on this policy throughout last year, and today that promise was made, and it was also a promise, as you know, that was kept. Promises made, promises kept. To any company that objects to our common sense reciprocal tariffs, again, reciprocal, back and forth, back and forth. And I call this kind reciprocal. This is not full reciprocal. This is kind reciprocal. But what we do is we cut it in half. We charge them. My answer is very simple if they complain. If you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America. And we've seen companies coming in like we've never seen before. Likewise to all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs. I say, terminate your own tariffs, drop your barriers, don't manipulate your currencies. They manipulate their currencies like nobody can even believe, which is a bad, bad thing and very devastating to us, and start buying tens of billions of dollars of American goods. Tariffs give our country protection against those that would do us economic harm, and many people were looking to do us economic harm. Maybe not so obviously, but they were doing tremendous economic harm. But even more importantly, they will give us growth. These tariffs are going to give us growth like you haven't seen before, and it'll be something very special to watch. I am so looking forward, and Brian, it's going to happen even faster than you said. You know, you might say, but it's already started. It's already started. Work's already begun on plants all around the country, and you see that as before. These are big, rich companies. We have $61 billion started on a big plant going up. It's going to be announced over the next 2 days, and they already started work. Many of these the biggest companies in the world, they've committed to build, build, build. We're going to build, 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 sir. And they came here to see me, and they wanted to know if they could have a press conference. I do as many as I can. I'm pretty busy trying to stop Russia and Ukraine and the Middle East. We got to stop that. We got to stop the Houthis, which we're making tremendous. They like shooting ships down and out of the water, sinking ships. They get a kick out of it, but they're not getting such a kick out of it now, are they, Mr. Secretary? They're not getting such a kick out of that now. But here are just a short list of some of the companies that have already announced and committed to investment. And this is a company that built its factories and its plants in China. Apple is going to spend $500 billion. They never spent money like that here. They're going to build their plants here. SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle, great companies, are investing $500 billion almost immediately. NVIDIA, a hot company, is investing hundreds of billions of dollars. They just announced. TSMC, the biggest, most important company in the world of chips from Taiwan, with no investment from us, is investing $200 billion. And they said the reason was, number one, the election of November 5th, and number two, the tariffs. They don't want to pay the tariffs, and the way they're not paying it is to build their plant here. So we're going to go from almost no percentage. We used to have 100% of the chip market. Now it's all in Taiwan. Almost all of it's in Taiwan, a couple of other countries, but mostly in Taiwan. And think of it, we had 100%. We lost it because of people in that office that didn't do their job. They allowed it to be stolen from us. Johnson & Johnson, great company, $55 billion. Eli Lilly, $27 billion. Meta is investing $500 billion. Wow. DeMac is investing $20 billion. CMA, CGM, $20 billion. And then you have Merck and Clarios, Stellantis, General Motors, GE Aerospace, Honda, Nissan, Hyundai are all putting in billions and billions of dollars, and they're committed 100%. So. And we've never had, and this is after 2.5 months. This is after just a short, this all took place as soon as we came out with what everybody wanted to do. You know, I watched a gentleman today on television. He used to work with Lee Iacocca, a very respected automobile person, and he said, you know, because they're asking people, they try and get as many negative people as they can, but they can't find them too much. It's pretty hard to find in terms of what we're doing, especially when they see all this investment. They said, so tell me, what do you think of what Trump is doing from the automobile standpoint? He said, I can't believe it. Somebody is finally, he's an older guy, real pro, really top guy, with Lee Iacocca. He said, I never thought I'd see the day when this would happen, where somebody had the courage to go and do what has to be done. This is transforming our nation. Our entire nation is going to be transformed, not only with the cars, but on every single other item that's built. We're going to become an industrial powerhouse. And he said that so beautifully today. In fact, I'm going to find out, I'm going to get a tape, and Bruce, I'm going to get that tape, and I'm going to send it to you out in Long Island, and you're going to play it for the people. And all your union workers and your non-union workers out there, you got a pretty even split. But we have, so far, it looks like we're going to have about $6 trillion of investments, and you wouldn't do that in years in this country over the last number of years. $6 trillion, and that's going to be much higher by the end of the year. And think of what $6 trillion is. You wouldn't have even a small percentage of that under this other system. We're going to be an entirely different country, and it's going to be fantastic for the workers. It's going to be fantastic for everyone. There will never have been a transformation of a country like the transformation that's already happening in the United States of America. It's an incredible thing to watch, and it's incredible to meet with the top people, people that you read about, very wealthy people, or people that are great managers and executives and presidents of big public companies, and to watch the enthusiasm they have now that they didn't have. They gave up on our country. They went to foreign countries and they built. Companies are pouring into our country at levels never seen before, with jobs and money to follow, and it's really beautiful. In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Always, fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country. You would have had no jobs. It was all going to other countries. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. And again, I have great respect for President Xi of China, great respect for China, but they were taking tremendous advantage of us, and I commend them for that. I say, hey, if you can get away with it, that's okay. But, you know, they understand exactly what's happening, and they probably, most of them are saying it's about time they did something, but, and they're going to fight, and they're going to fight fair. Everyone's going to fight. You know, it's like, I say to the leaders, look, you got to take care of your country, but we have to start taking care of our country now. We can't do what we've been doing for the last 50 years. From the day of my election, the stock market went up in my first term 88%, with NASDAQ going up 155%, more than any president has ever had in any term in office, by far. And I think we're going to blow that away. And maybe the numbers won't show, but I think they're going to show much better than even those numbers. But what you're going to see is you're going to see activity, that empty, dead sites, factories that are falling down. Those factories will be knocked down, and they're going to have brand new factories built in their place. They're not only talking about renovating, they're talking about brand new, the best anywhere in the world, the biggest anywhere in the world. I have a friend who builds car plants, and I said, I want to see the biggest and the best. He said, well, we have to go to Mexico. I said, no, I want to see it in the United States. He said, we're not building them in there. This is a year and a half ago during the campaign. He said, we're not building it. You'd have to go to Mexico. When I was starting to decide to run, and I went to number one in the polls very rapidly, I want to say, like, let's say in the first hour. And then shortly thereafter, it looked like I was going to win, and the fake news was saying, oh, no, don't do this. What they don't know is if I didn't win, they would have really been in trouble, because nobody wants to read them anyway. But I tell you what, when it looked like I was going to win, I announced that I was going to be doing exactly what we're talking about today. Great consistency, actually, because I've been talking about it for 40 years, but because I saw what was happening 40 years ago. If you look at my old speeches when I was young, very handsome, my old speeches, and that people would say I'd be on a television show, I'd be talking about how we were being ripped off by these countries. I mean, nothing changes very much. The only thing that changed were the countries, but nothing really changes. But it's why it's such an honor. It's such an honor to be finally able to do this. If you look at China, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in my term, hundreds of billions. They never paid 10 cents to any other president, and yet they paid hundreds of billions, so much so that Biden couldn't do anything. They wanted to try and terminate it because he had a very special relationship with China. You know what the relationship was? He had a special relationship. But the numbers were so big, that they couldn't do it. So they did ease it up. They did things that they shouldn't have done. They made it a lot more comfortable for them, but they couldn't do it because the numbers were hundreds of billions of dollars, and I did that. And we were on our way to doing something like incredible. And then we had a very bad election happen, a very bad election. A lot of bad things happened. So when I said we got to do it again, I said we have to make it too big to rig. And we made it too big to rig, and we won in records, and it was a monumental win. And it was such an honor to see so many of you, like Brian and your friends, here with us to celebrate, and to more importantly celebrate what we're doing, because that wouldn't be a full celebration if we didn't do this, because this will be an entirely different country in a short period of time. It'll be something the whole world will be talking about it. The critics made the very tired predictions earlier this year, but in February, core inflation dropped to the lowest rate in 4 years, and the price of eggs, as you know, just in a month and a half, we were there for 4 weeks, and the first week I got blamed for eggs. I said, I just got here. They said eggs have gone up at like 250%, and you can't get eggs, and they were going crazy. And I said, I just got here. And then we got to work on eggs, and we got to work on everything. And our great Secretary of Agriculture, you did a fantastic job, Brooke Rollins. She did a fantastic job. And as I said before, the price of eggs dropped now 59%, and they're going down more, and the availability is fantastic. They were saying that for Easter, please don't use eggs. Could you use plastic eggs? I said, we don't want to do that. We want to, and you really came through. It's an amazing job. Thank you very much, Brooke. You did great. But likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it in the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it. Groceries went through the roof, And I campaigned on that. I talked about the word groceries for a lot. And energy costs now are down, groceries are down, gasoline is way under $3, and people are beginning to be able to buy things and live again. We brought prices way down. We created 10,000 already in a few weeks, new manufacturing jobs, and it was that took place in 1 month, numbers that they haven't seen in a long time. We had virtually no inflation under my term. We had virtually no inflation for 4 years. But after transitioning over to Sleepy Joe, it went from almost non-existent to the highest in the history of our country. They're the highest inflation in the history of our country, brought up by energy and bad spending and bad policy, and a lot of bad things happened. How about allowing millions and millions and millions of people to pour into our country with open borders, where it's so sad to see even now. And I see our great secretary you have done. Stand up, please, Christy. Stand up. Christy Noem. And Tom Homan. These people are doing a great job, but gotten them out in records. We have problems with judges that don't want them to go out. They want Tren de Aragua, and they want MS-13, the most vicious gangs ever. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Absolute killer gangs. They kill people. They don't even think about it. And we put them out, and we have judges now, radical left judges that they don't want them to go out. They want them to even be brought back. Let's bring them back. You've done a fantastic job, and please thank everybody. Homeland Security, thank everybody. Appreciate it. And we now have a border that's the best border that we've ever had, even better than it was my first term. My first term we did good, but this one we really specialized in. We've done really well. And we had records then. We had the best, safest border. 4 years ago, we had the best border there ever was. And now we have, you've actually matched it and done even better. And we're going to get it down the right way. And we want people, by the way, to come into our country, but we want to come in through a legal process. We want them to come in legally. We need more people. We need people to run these plants and to help the auto workers and the Teamsters and the non-union people and everybody else. But we need people and the farmers. And we're going to let people come in, but they want to come in. We want them to come in legally. They have to have the capability of loving our country, not people that hate our country. We don't want them in our country. And now we're going to pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and that's where we're relying on Mike and John Thune. And we will not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid benefits, and the Democrats will, because if they got in, the entire economy would collapse. This country was heading for a collapse under the people that you saw. They were horrible. I think one of the reasons people like the job, I have my highest approval ratings because I think they're comparing me to the worst administration in the history of our country, so I appreciate that at least. But Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader, appreciate it, Mike. John Thune have been fantastic, by the way. But they've been working tirelessly on taking the next step to pass the plan for our one big, beautiful bill. I'd like to name it that if you can. One big, I made that statement about 6 months ago, and everybody calls it one big, beautiful bill. And it will be that. It'll have everything, the big tax cuts and every incentive there is. And it'll be fantastic. And by the way, for the cars, we're asking for an interest deduction on a loan. So if you build the car, only in America we do it, Brian. If the car's not built in America, you don't get the interest rate deduction. But if you build the car in America, if you buy a car, if it's built in America, then you get an interest rate deduction, tax deduction, and that's a big thing. It's going to be a big thing. I think that's going to pay for itself very quickly, that deduction. Never happened. We've never had anything like that before. Somebody said, where do you get the idea? Because it's so basic. You would think that would have happened a long time ago. It never did, and I'm very happy it didn't, because now I can say that was my idea. But we're going to get us closer to the debt extension. We have to get the debt extension passed, and I know you're going to be able to do that, Mike, and it's very important that you do that. And all of the other things that the Senate budget plan gives us, along with working, because I know they're working together, John and Mike, and the two bills are going very well together. We need to get our shared priorities done, including certain permanent tax cuts. We want the tax cuts to be permanent, spending cuts, energy and historic investments in defense, border, and so much more. We're covering everything. These will be phenomenal. There'll be no bill like this going to straighten. One bill is going to straighten out our country for many, many years to come. And we said, let's just do it and let's get it done. And some guys will love it and some guys will like it a little bit less because they're not getting what they were exactly looking for, but they're getting a lot. They'll never, if we get this done, it'll be the most incredible bill ever passed in the history of our Congress and Senate and congressmen, the senators and the congressmen, many of whom are here today, will be very proud of themselves. I really believe that it's going to set us on a whole new prosperous path. We're going to cut spending and right-size the budget back to where it should be. We're going to do that very strongly. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. John, thank you. Oh, look at all of our senators over there. Oh, boy, that's a nice group of people. But I won't like them so much if they don't get this bill done. That's a great group, and Congressman, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Tremendous people. The Senate plan is my complete and total support, and the House plan likewise is very similar. They're moving along pretty much at the same clip, and as soon as you're ready, you'll show it to me, and I'm sure it'll have my support, Mike. Every Republican congressman and senator must unify. We have to unify. We can't be separated. We have to get it done. We have to get absolutely everything we can, and we have to take care of the American people. That's the only thing that matters. We have to take care of the American people first. We need to pass this bill immediately, get it done, including debt extension. From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. The pharmaceutical companies are going to come roaring back. They're coming roaring back. They're all coming back to our country because if they don't, they got a big tax to pay. And if they do, I'll be very happy, and you're going to be very happy, and you're going to be very safe. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart, American steel, and we're going to build it with American pride like we used to. We're approaching our 100th day as president and have been given credit by a lot of people, actually, even some of the fake news. Can you believe it? Which in this case hopefully isn't fake, for having done more in that time than any other administration in the history of our country in the first 100 days. I think we've had an amazing, in terms of what we've done, what we've gotten accomplished. I'd like to see if we can get that war ended and another war from not starting in the Middle East. We have to get Russia. They're losing 2,000 on average, 2,500 people today, young people, soldiers, Russian. Think of that. 2,500 through some days, but on average, probably over about a 1 week period, it's 2,712, they say. They're losing those soldiers. They're dying. They're being decimated. And they're not from our country, but they're from other countries, but they're human beings. They're from Russia. They're from Ukraine in this period, most of them. And we're going to get it stopped. It's a senseless war that would have never happened if I was president, and it shouldn't be allowed to go on. And I think we're being given good cooperation by Russia and by Ukraine, but we have to get it stopped. It's humanity. It's humanity. It's a terrible thing. This will be a very big moment. I think you're going to remember today. It's going to be a free nation that we're dealing with. We're going to have a very free and beautiful nation. It's going to be Liberation Day in America, and it's going to be a day that hopefully you're going to look back in years to come and you're going to say, you know, he was right. This has turned out to be one of the most important days in the history of our country. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
So there you have it, President Trump in the Rose Garden at the White House on what he has dubbed Liberation Day when it comes to the economy. He has announced reciprocal tariffs against countries all over the world. He has said basically what we are going to do is reciprocal tariffs charge countries what they charge us to sell our products in their countries. And instead of charging them exactly what they charge us, in his words, and we have to take his numbers for what they are at this moment, that the U.S. will charge half as much as what other countries are doing for us. And he gave a litany of examples. He said China, and this is the number calculated by the White House, they charge 67% in tariffs on American goods and other charges. So the U.S. will now charge 34%. The EU, our allies, he says they rip us off. He says they charge about 39% in tariffs and other charges. We will charge them now about half that, 20%. They went down the list of a number of countries. He said Vietnam, our allies, he said, I like them, but they charge us 90%. We'll charge them about half that at about 40% for items coming here. He said for the rest of the countries that he did not list actual numbers for, there'll be a broad baseline of a 10% reciprocal tariff on any products that they're trying to send to the U.S. to sell here. And of course, we know U.S. businesses then pick up those costs here. And then many economists, of course, have said over a period of many weeks here that then those costs are passed on to the consumer. As he signs this into law, I want to bring in our chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, tracking this with me right here at the desk in New York. And Rebecca, again, bottom line of 10% reciprocal tariffs on all countries, and he listed specific numbers for China, the EU, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan, India, and went down a number of other countries. It would seem, because these numbers are sort of differing from country to country, that there might be some wiggle room here moving forward.
Well, the negotiation that could happen going forward is certainly on the table here, and he even sort of opened the door to that as he was talking to the audience there, saying we can have conversations with these foreign countries. But the big headline here is that this is based on the White House's math, but these are very high numbers. A 34% tariff on China, 20% tariff on the EU, 26% on India, and that 10% minimum, that's not insignificant.
Let's go to Rachel Scott right there in the Rose Garden. Rachel, the temperature there in the garden, she's standing by for us momentarily. Mary Bruce is on the other side of the White House. Mary, as Rebecca says, these are historic tariffs not seen at this level, at quick math here, since the early 1900s. This would be an extraordinary shift, and we did not hear a lot from the president about any immediate impact on the American consumer, the customer who goes to the grocery store, the mall, the auto lot to buy a car. We didn't hear a lot of detail about what the initial impact could be here.
No, we didn't. Look, the president is adamant that these tariffs are going to boost the U.S. economy, that it's going to spur a renaissance in American manufacturing. But economists have warned that that takes time, that it could be months or even years to boost production on American soil. And in the meantime, they say American consumers are going to bear the brunt of this, that costs are going to skyrocket. The president didn't touch on that in these lengthy remarks. Now, in the past, he has said that Americans should be braced for some short-term pain. The question is, how long is that pain going to last? And when pressed on that, in recent days, the White House has said simply that Americans need to trust the president and have faith. David.
Mary Bruce, right there at the White House, at the Rose Garden. Rachel Scott also standing by. Rachel, I understand you can hear me now. There you are, with the crowd there behind you. They liked what they were hearing. And, of course, the question is how our allies will respond to this around the world, our friends around the world, with these extraordinarily high tariffs that the president says are long overdue. And, again, what the initial impact, and when I say initial, this could be in many weeks, several months, if you will, because also economists say if you want to bring products back to America, it's going to take quite some time before that can get up and running.
Exactly, David. And even those who are here, steel workers, auto workers, they acknowledge that while they are supportive of the president's plan, that this is not going to be like a light switch on and off, that this could take time, months and years for manufacturing ultimately to get up to speed. But you heard here from the president today, he is betting that this plan will work. Of course, across the country, of course, businesses are also preparing to increase their prices for customers, David.
Rachel Scott, our thanks to you. Very quickly, back to Rebecca Jarvis. The Dow did close up 235 today, but you're looking at the futures already, and they're reacting to
the
news
futures,
here.
which point to what will happen tomorrow morning, and they reverse course. They are pointing much lower for tomorrow morning's open.
As the first reaction comes in on the markets. The futures, as Rebecca says, down for tomorrow based on the news here today. We're going to have our coverage continue at ABC News Live, abcnews.com. For many of you, your local news is standing by right here in the East. And, of course, I'll be back here with the entire team for World News Tonight. I'm David Muir in New York.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
And I'm Kate Whitworth here in Los Angeles, and we continue our breaking news coverage here on ABC News Live. Of course, President Trump just announcing these sweeping new tariffs. The president outlining these new policies from the White House. He did it in the Rose Garden, and that, of course, included, as you heard there, the 10% baseline tariffs on all countries. But Trump also announcing these reciprocal tariffs, which he deemed kind reciprocal tariffs. And these are on the countries that he considers to be the worst offenders, which the White House says includes roughly 60 countries. In fact, he took the time to hold up a chart to really explain their calculation here. So for more, I want to bring in Selena Wang, who's in our D.C. bureau. And Selena, if I can, let's start with these kind reciprocal tariffs, if you will. And look, there's the chart right there, Selena. And China, of course, is at the top of it. So he said they're going to use these reciprocal tariffs at about 50%. This isn't what we anticipated, but this is what his plan is, and he's showing you their math here. So he's saying they tax the United States 67%, so they are going to have a discounted reciprocal tariff there at 34%. Again, reiterating, Selena, that certainly China at the very top of that list.
But, Kana, also important to point out here that we don't know exactly how the White House is calculating those numbers. Those tariff rates, they are very high. It is higher than what a lot of economists and policymakers were expecting when it comes to China. We're talking about a 34% tariff rate, 26% on India, and 24% for Japan. So we're talking about not only our adversaries, but also our allies getting hit with these very steep tariffs. And in addition to that, the president also saying that he'll be imposing universal tariffs, a baseline tariff of 10% on all imports from all countries. So this is certain to upend the global trading system. It could have a serious impact on the global economy, Kana.
Certainly, and as Rebecca Jarvis just mentioned there, the stock futures are already trending much lower than they were at the close of the stock market today. I want to bring in ABC News senior political correspondent Rachel Scott, who was there during this speech. And Rachel Scott, he actually took the time to bring up a member of the United Auto Workers Union there from Detroit, who was very positive and optimistic here, noting that there's a 25% tariff now on all foreign-made autos starting at midnight, Rachel.
Yes, Kana, and this is the split screen that we are seeing play out here in this country right now, because you do have auto workers, steel workers who are present here in the Rose Garden who say that this is a good thing, that they are excited, they are eager to see manufacturing start to get back up to speed here in the United States. But even they acknowledge that this is not going to be a on and off switch, right? This could take months, this could take years, this could take a while for this actually to get up and running. Now, the White House says trust the president on this, that it will actually happen. But Kana, look, I just got back from Wisconsin on our road trip there. We also stopped and we also spoke to business owners. I talked to an owner of an auto repair shop. He does repair about 90% of foreign vehicles, with these 25% tariffs set to go in today on all foreign cars and auto parts that are made outside of the United States. He says he's going to be increasing his prices by at least 25%. That's the bare minimum that they're going to go up. And that's going to drive up prices. He said over the last few days, he has had customers come in trying to buy new cars because they're anticipating that more prices are going to start going up. And on top of that, he says just the unpredictability of all of this really impacts the bottom line, because you do have Americans out there that are trying to make sense of these on again, off again, now on again tariffs, and what exactly that could mean for their budgets, for their wallets, and for their own bottom lines back at home, Kana.
And no question, certainly a lot of Americans wondering about that. Rachel Scott, our thanks to you. I also want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, for us now as well. And Mary, really to elaborate there on what we're hearing from Rachel, as much as we learned today, there is still an overwhelming amount here of uncertainty of what this means for the future of Americans, their own pocketbooks, but also, Mary, how even the White House actually calculated this rate of tariffs that we're going to see.
Well, look, the president has been saying now for weeks, even out on the campaign trail, that what they tariff us, we are now going to tariff them. Now, the White House says because he is lenient, and as the president said there in the Rose Garden, because he is kind, he's only charging what they are describing as the worst offenders half of what they charge us. So there's this 10% baseline tariff on all countries, and then those who go beyond that, they are going to put that 50% rate tariff on them, half of what they charge us. But there are a lot of questions about how this is all going to play out, because make no mistake, these countries, many of them have already said they are going to retaliate. They are going to respond. We have heard that from the European Union saying that they have a strong plan to retaliate. Mexico saying tomorrow they're going to announce their plan to respond. Many of these countries simply don't want to get into a tit-for-tat trade war with the U.S. And the president, of course, did leave open some wiggle room here, did leave open the possibility that they could negotiate, that the countries could try and take actions to then lessen this tariff and this punishment. But what the president said he ultimately wants to see is for these countries to invest in the U.S. Again, though, economists caution that those investments take time to have their impact be felt, that it could be months, even years for production really to ramp up here at home on American soil. And the big question, the big X factor here is what happens in the meantime, because economists, of course, have cautioned that American consumers are going to bear the brunt of this, that costs are going to skyrocket on everything from clothing to produce, cars, electronics, you name it. And the White House, the president didn't mention that today. He didn't want to focus on that aspect of it. He's focused on the big picture and his adamant insistence that this will ultimately grow the American economy. He, of course, declaring this a declaration of economic independence. Kira.
He certainly did. An overall effort here to the day that American industry was reformed. That's what he's saying here. But as Mary Bruce just pointed out, there wasn't a lot of discussion about how this impacts everyday Americans and what's happening in their homes and at their kitchen table. And I want to bring in ABC News political director Avery Harper for more, because, Avery, it is interesting that when the president was asked here about possible exemptions that might be talked about with other countries, it was surprising perhaps to see that this window for negotiation might be open just a bit. But Mary reiterated here that he would demand a drop in tariffs. He doesn't want the currencies manipulated, and he really wants these other countries to buy American goods. So is this perhaps leaving the door open?
We'll have to wait and see exactly what happens. But we heard the president talk about tariffs being a promise that he made on the campaign trail, and him saying that this is a promise kept. The fact is, when you look at public opinion, there isn't a really positive outlook here for the president in terms of sentiment around tariffs. When you look at a recent Marquette University poll, and I'm going to read from it, they asked if Americans thought that tariffs would help the economy, hurt the economy, or not make a difference. 58% said it would hurt the economy. And you have to go back to what the top issues were as voters headed to the polls back in November. It was issues of the economy and inflation. And what that meant for people where they lived is things, the cost of living, things like the cost of housing, the cost of everyday items, things like groceries and putting gas in your car. And if we see those costs skyrocket for Americans, as many economists are expecting that they will after these tariffs are put in place, that is potentially a political liability for the president as Republicans head into a midterm election year and are hoping to retain their power in both the Senate and the House in order to push for Trump's agenda.
Right, you have to wonder how some of these Republicans in those swing districts will be answering to their constituents here in the coming months as they head towards.
And him saying that this is a promise kept. The fact is, when you look at public opinion, there isn't a really positive outlook here for the president in terms of sentiment around tariffs. When you look at a recent Marquette University poll, and I'm going to read from it, they asked if Americans thought that tariffs would help the economy, hurt the economy, or not make a difference. 58% said it would hurt the economy. And you have to go back to what the top issues were as voters headed to the polls back in November. It was issues of the economy and inflation. And what that meant for people where they lived is things, the cost of living, things like the cost of housing, the cost of everyday items, things like groceries and putting gas in your car. And if we see those costs skyrocket for Americans, as many economists are expecting that they will after these tariffs are put in place, that is potentially a political liability for the president as Republicans head into a midterm election year and are hoping to retain their power in both the Senate and the House in order to push for Trump's agenda.
Right, you have to wonder how some of these Republicans in those swing districts will be answering to their constituents here in the coming months as they head towards midterms. Avery, thank you. ABC News Chief Business Correspondent Rebecca Jarvis here as well. And Rebecca, I know right away when these came out, my guess is your eye was on the stock market here because it closed a little higher, perhaps, than people thought. But man, when this announcement came, it changed.
Sure, coming into this announcement, I think there was some hope among analysts that perhaps these would be lighter than many assumed. And instead, what we have are very heavy tariffs from China, 34%, India, 26%, the EU, 20%, and then that baseline minimum of 10%. That means that unless there's a negotiation, and we have reason to believe that there very much will be these conversations happening behind the scenes, that these are very significant tariffs, the most significant that we've seen since the early 1900s levied on foreign countries. Now, the reason for these tariffs, the reason that this administration says they are levying these tariffs is for fairness. It is to bring more manufacturing back here to the United States. But that is a big challenge, and it's a long obstacle standing in their way because the types of decisions that businesses need to make to bring manufacturing back to here in the U.S., these are not light switch decisions. These are the kinds of decisions that take months, years, and billions of dollars in investment and commitments. And for many companies, they already have plans for what's coming 2, 3, 4 years down the road. They're now having to rethink those plans. I would also just point out that there are just certain realities of the marketplace that make this incredibly complicated to solve. For example, if you are a steel worker here in the United States, your average salary may be between $35 and $50. If you're that same steel worker in China or Mexico or India, you're making about $5 an hour. There's just these gigantic differentials, not only between what tariffs countries are imposing on us when they export their products here, but there's also giant differentials in terms of our quality of life here, how much we get paid, unions. All of these factors play in to the price of things that are created here in the United States, and therefore using something like tariffs to solve them is a tricky road ahead.
It certainly is, and you're right to point all of that out and spell it out so clearly for us. I'm sure you're going to have a busy day ahead as well tomorrow. Rebecca, thank you for being here with us. I also want to bring in Diane Swank. She's a KPMG chief economist. Diane, thank you for being here with us. I actually have quite a specific question for you, so forgive me, but I'm just really curious about the president specifically with the auto industry here. He's saying there's going to be a 25% tariff on all foreign-made auto. He brought up a member of the UAW who was saying in 6 months, he might see some benefits. In a year, he feels like he's going to see some benefits, and that he's excited about 3 years to come. Is that an overly optimistic timeline in your view?
It is, because auto plants take 3 to 5 years just to build, let alone get them staffed. And the other issue is that executive order tariffs, as we've been talking about the uncertainty out there, and the markets are down right now because of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to be negotiated away, but executive order tariffs are done via stroke of the pen. That they could easily be taken away that quickly, and people wouldn't want to locate here knowing that. We also know that historically, always the amount of the tariffs in terms of the welfare blow to the economy or the burden that they place on consumers is never made up for the industries that they protect.
And that is interesting. He's talking about perhaps revitalizing some dwindling, auto industries, but also building entirely new plants as well. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I also want to bring in our ABC News business reporter, Alexis Christoforous, as well. And Alexis, if I can, I also have another follow-up on the auto industry, because we've heard the president talk about a tax deduction if you were to purchase an American-made car. And he went on to say that essentially that would pay for itself. Again, a bit optimistic to talk about something like that happening so early on.
Yeah, Kana, and there is no such thing as an all-American-made car anymore. I mean, even GM and Ford, U.S. car makers, they make a lot of their auto parts come from Canada and Mexico. Some of the cars are actually assembled in plants that they have built over the border and then come back to the U.S. When a car is being built, it can go back and forth over the border several times. So what happens to those parts? What happens to those cars? Will they be exempt from the tariffs that the president is talking about? It's going to be, you're going to be hard pressed to be able to buy a car that's not touched in some way by these tariffs. And depending on the analyst you talk to, I actually spoke to an analyst, Dan Ives, over at Wedbush, whose area is autos. He says that a new car could now cost another $5,000 to $15,000 more because of these tariffs. I want to step away from the auto industry for a minute because we got some news from the National Retail Federation just moments ago, and they are coming out now against these tariffs. The president of the NRF now saying that this is going to impact families, especially low-income families, and saying specifically these tariffs will have a disproportionate impact on local communities and will be particularly harmful to small retailers. Remember, the other foot hasn't dropped here, Kana, and that is the reciprocal tariffs. How will these countries respond? They, will look to negotiate with President Trump, we're assuming, but in the meantime, they may slap tariffs on many of our goods, which again puts pressure on many industries here in the U.S. What are those companies going to do? Probably have to raise prices on us, on U.S. consumers as well.
Right, we've heard from so many small businesses here at ABC News Live that have said it's really, really challenging, especially because many of them buy their goods from China. And so that is certainly, we're seeing that impact almost already as they try to prepare. I want to bring in ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang for more on that, because we're starting to talk a little bit here about the ripple effect here, Selena. And certainly all eyes are on American families and small businesses, as Alexis just pointed out. But also, we don't really know how these other countries are going to react. We know that the president of Mexico said she doesn't want to do a tit for tat, but also there's some reporting here, Selena, about China trying to potentially coordinate its response to these tariffs with Japan and South Korea.
And Kana, that's such an important point because so many businesses I've been talking to were hoping that they were going to get more clarity today, but we don't have that clarity. There's still so many questions to your point about whether or not these tariffs are negotiable and how other countries are going to respond. To your point, Mexico says they're not going to turn this into a tit-for-tat trade war, but other countries may want to do so. And we're hearing now the reaction from analysts and experts as well who say that this is really the end of an era, an end of this U.S. underpinned global trading system. And now with today's announcement, U.S. tariffs are now approaching levels not seen since the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, which incited a global trade war and deepened the Great Depression. So a lot of anxiety and nerves. I've been speaking to small businesses today, Kana, who tell me that they're on pins and needles. They feel like that over the last few weeks, they've been making decisions in the dark. It's been hard for them to figure out how to price their products, how to adjust their supply chains if they don't know what the cost of their inputs are going to be tomorrow, next week, or the next month, not to mention the impact of those reciprocal tariffs. I spoke to one business owner today who runs a steel can company. He says he's already had to raise prices because of those 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum that already went into effect. He says some of his customers have already frozen their purchases. So President Trump here, Kana, really making a big political gamble here. He had campaigned, of course, on lowering inflation, on lowering costs for everyday Americans, but instead, this is most certainly going to raise prices for Americans at home.
All right, Selena Wang, our thanks to you. And coming up next here on ABC News Live, the once-in-a-generation weather event. It is triggering a tornado outbreak and putting millions of Americans at risk right now for historic flooding as well. Our chief meteorologist, Ginger Z, has the latest from the storm zone.
The news never stops.
From Tampa, we are here tonight as Hurricane Milton has just made landfall.
The surge just keeps coming up.
Right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
We're in artillery position about 2 miles away from Gaza.
And ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
We're not far from where this rally took place, so just stick with us here.
Traveling with the president to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Here in London today.
Off the coast of Gaza.
Downtown Tel Aviv, rockets or missiles coming in.
From the most devastating disaster in Hawaii.